do I need to go over to Foxborough Middle School and find a couple of 12-year-olds who can execute the most basic skill that we have in football? Or are you guys going to figure this out? I'm looking up at the Jumbotron watching the highlight, and all of a sudden I hear all the coaches call my name. Well, I got a baseball cap on just like this and don't have my helmet anywhere near me. Not panic necessarily, but I'm like, oh, where's my helmet?
Garrett, appreciate you being here, man.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. I know I was telling you a little bit before, but it just kind of since I got that DM on Instagram, I kind of dove in and started looking around the show. It seems like you've had a lot of fun guests, and so I'm excited to be a part of it. Thanks.
No, I appreciate you being here. You're the next fun guest.
I hope so. We'll see, but thank you.
For sure. So I wanted to dive right in, and usually I do this kind of chronological order, and so we're just going to do that. But I want to kind of start in your early days, because I know that obviously your dad was quite the quarterback himself. And when did he kind of, plant the seed of football for you?
I mean, honestly, he did not have to do much. Like, football was all I ever knew growing up. I mean, my first memories were, I was born in Buffalo, and I have very, very few memories from that time because we moved when I was like 2 or 3. But my very first memories were tossing the football to myself in the living room while he was playing for the Chargers. So I just throw it, run to the other end of the living room, catch it, smash into the curtains. My mom would yell at me. I'd do it all over. So that's like football was it for me. I was hooked from a very, very young age.
Yeah, and I mean, we were just talking offline a second ago, but I feel like football here at any level, high school, college, pros, just means more. It's Texas, right?
Yeah, it definitely does. And I was sort of, I didn't really know what to expect when I first moved here.
Yeah.
My parents kind of picked Austin on a map. My parents kind of picked Austin on a map, and we settled in here when I was 5 or 6 years old, and then we moved to this small little town, up and coming town, Lake Travis. And Lake Travis was not, you hear about the Friday Night Lights towns that they all shut. Lake Travis was not that when I was growing up. They were not, I think the 2 years leading up to, we hired a guy named Jeff Dykes who kind of turned the program around. But the 2 years leading up to that, Lake Travis was 1-19. So, I mean, not good by any stretch of the imagination. And a lot of credit to Jeff Dykes. And then now, that turned into Chad Morris and Hank Carter, and Lake Travis has turned into sort of a football powerhouse. But I didn't know what to expect when it came to Texas football when I was a kid, because that, number one, wasn't our family, and number two, wasn't our town. So to be able to kind of grow into that and be a part of it growing up was really fun.
Yeah. And I mean, the numbers you put up, I was looking, were absurd, man. I was like, I think it was 3 years playing varsity, right? And over 12,000 passing yards, 120 plus passing yards. I think, what was it? 23 rushing touchdowns on the ground. You put up some numbers.
Well, yeah, I mean, we had a great team. So, my junior and senior year, we made it all the way to the state championship and won. So obviously you're playing 16 games. That's certainly part of it. But it was, like I said, I mean, it was, we were kind of part of the beginning of the passing revolution. And, you started seeing all these spread air raid offenses make their way down to high school. And I got lucky to play for 2 coaches that just love to throw it around. So,
yeah. And, you mentioned that when you kind of were at Lake Travis, it wasn't quite the powerhouse, but it, as it kept going, I mean, I think the next quarterback up, correct me if I'm wrong, was Baker, right?
Well, so if we want to go all the way back, Todd Reesing, who played at Kansas,
right? Yep.
Todd Reesing was before me.
Yep.
So he went to Kansas and that was kind of the heyday of Kansas football during his couple years there. And then you have myself, then Michael Brewer, who went to Texas Tech and Virginia Tech, transferred to Virginia Tech, famously beat Ohio State. And then obviously Baker, and obviously everyone knows Baker's story. And then I think followed by that, there may have been 3 or 4 more in a row that ended up going to either, I think it was like a run of Big 12 quarterbacks or just Division I at large. But, we had a pretty good run of guys in a row there. So fun to be a part of that for sure.
Yeah. And you and Baker are pretty good friends, right?
We are. So growing up, Baker and my little brother are roughly the same age. And so my brother was, I wouldn't ever let him throw the ball. So he was forced to be a receiver whenever he was a kid. I just needed somebody to play catch with, and he got stuck being that guy. So he never had a chance to be a quarterback. But Baker, from a young age, obviously was a quarterback too. So he was kind of always over at the house. And as he got into high school, we got to be close as well. And then if you fast forward to, 10 years after that, we got to be teammates on the Browns, which was incredible. And I'm not sure happens very often.
Yeah. And was there a moment early on, maybe in Baker's childhood, where you're like, oh, okay, this guy might be a guy right here.
I always like to joke, and obviously that story's been well told. Like, Baker was always on the smaller side. He was kind of he's got that famous chip on his shoulder, right? And he still has it to this day, of course. But you could tell, as you're saying, from a very young age, you could tell that he had a little something to him. And of course, it's impossible to predict and see how he's going to mature and grow. And with any of us, you never know how things are going to turn out. But, as far as like the mental makeup, even before he was physically developed, you could tell that he had, called that it factor, just a little something to him that like he was not going to let the older kids. Cause again, he was, he had an older brother. He was around all of us all the time. My brother was always bigger than him. I mean, he was always going to get in there and scrap.
Yeah, I love it. I'm sure you guys had some great
We had a lot of
competition
good
early
times.
on.
We had
Yeah,
a lot of good times. There's, a lot of fun, and we'd go up to the high school and we'd spend hours up there at the high school in our little indoor facility, just kind of goofing around. We had a game called Razzle that we'd play, which was like you could throw it forward from anywhere on the field, and it was always Baker and I versus the receivers, and then mixed in with a couple other guys. But we love to get after it.
that's awesome. And in your high school career, what was your first offer?
Oh man. I want to say it's been so long now. This is I want to say Nebraska actually. I
Okay.
randomly showed up one day, one afternoon to football, and there was an envelope sitting in there. And I think Bill Callahan at Nebraska was the first one. Now that being said, even from that age, and I knew Texas was the only Texas was it.
Yeah.
So there was not a whole lot of paying attention to, other schools that were offering me. And I tried to have an open mind. Like I loved Peyton Manning growing up. So I tried to entertain Tennessee. My dad played at Cal. So I tried to go out there to Berkeley a time or two, but like there was nothing other than Texas.
Yeah. And was that because like you grew up, what was the,
Honestly, yeah, I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
My best friend growing up, turned into my best receiver my last couple of years of high school, and his dad coached at Texas growing up, so I got to be around the program from a very young age, and got pictures with Major Applewhite and Ricky Williams when I'm 6-7 years old, and again, much like just football in general, I was hooked, and so I love Texas. We're right there, we're right there in Austin. That was number one for me from day one.
and when did they come into the picture?
Well, gosh, I guess, unofficially from a pretty early age. I can't really remember specifically, but I feel like, after my sophomore season, we kind of went and sat down with Greg Davis, the OC at the time, and Mac Brown, and they said, listen, we're not going to make this back then. Back then the recruiting process was a little more standardized. There wasn't, it wasn't kind of the Wild West that it is these days, or at least how it feels.
You weren't getting $1 million offers to play.
Well, and they were like, listen, we want to offer you a scholarship. We want you to come here, but we want you to keep it between us for the time being. We'll wait until after signing day the following year so that this 2008 recruiting class can kind of have their due. And then, you'll be our, our first official scholarship offer for that next class. And so it was sort of a long process, but like I said, I knew from that, from well before that, but from that moment, of course, I didn't have, obviously, I didn't have 50 offers or anything like that. I think everybody knew there's no point in wasting it.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Like I spoke with Trevor Knight probably 3 or 4 weeks ago, and it's always that same kind of discourse between coach and to be or I guess offeree of like, hey, we're giving you this offer, but kind of mums the word on this. But isn't the expectation that they kind of the offeree is like out there like I just got to offer because it's just yeah.
Well, yeah. I think a lot of that is obviously you're talking about Bob Stoops and Mac Brown, two coaches that have been doing it a really long time, and I think a lot of that is just wanting to give the class prior, their kind of day in the sun or their due as far as not taking anything away from them. And I as a 15-year-old kid, I was gonna do whatever I said. But at the same time, I understood and respected that portion of it. So
yeah.
Yeah.
And I read that you were a 5-star, and was that something that was, because I know these days kids are probably checking Rivals and 24/7 Sports like every single day, but I'm sure it was maybe a little different. And
We had Rivals. Rivals was the only one. I think ESPN maybe came on. Actually, I ended up going to ESPN's All American game out of high school rather than the Rivals Army All American game because they said I could. They said I could bring my coach Chad Morris along with me to be our offensive coordinator, quarterback coach, or something like that. So that kind of made that decision easy for me. But I think, like you're saying, there wasn't 1,000 different recruiting services. It was literally Rivals, and then I think ESPN started while I was in school. So
yeah,
yeah, I mean, it's hard not to be aware of it, I guess. But again, try not to pay attention to those types of things.
then did it just kind of did it just kind of happen, or were you like, oh, I'm considered a 5-star? Okay, that's kind of cool.
Yeah, it just kind of happened, I
Okay.
think. I mean, of course, like the inner competitor is like, we had guys like Matt Barkley in my quarterback class.
Right.
Russell Shepard was another one who I was working hard to try to convince him to, not go to LSU and come to Texas instead with me. And he was like, no, LSU is going to let me play quarterback. And then, of course, he got there in the first spring, he moved to receiver.
Yeah.
So obviously, I wish but yes. So like, yeah, you keep track of it. And of course, like as a competitor, now there wasn't, I don't know if there was any kind of formula back then. It was just kind of arbitrary, like here's 4-star, here's 5-star, whatever it may be. But the competitor in you is like, yeah, I want to be the top player in this class.
Oh, no doubt. And before we get to the All American game, because I actually did want to touch on that, I read that you took part in I think it's an ESPN Elite 11.
Yes.
Camp.
Yeah, I did actually. I had the honor, whatever privilege of as a junior. And part of this is because a guy named Andy Bark, who ran the Elite 11 back then, he and my dad were college teammates at Cal. So when I was a junior, myself and Aaron Murray got to go out there and be like ball boys. And again, back then the recruiting rules were so very different. So they could only invite 11 guys. So in order to get around that, they invited 2 ball boys that were, we were technically out there to, be ball boys, shag and do all that sort of stuff. But we got to go be a part of it, do all the drills, do everything like that. So I got that experience as a junior. And then the following year, get to go back and gosh, I wish I could remember all the guys that were in that, but it was a lot. Zach Mettenberger, myself, Aaron Murray, Taj Boyd, Geno Smith, EJ Manuel, Mike Glennon, all guys that I got to go spend a week with out in California. And one of the most fun weeks, that I can remember as a high school football player, because all these guys are going through the same sort of stuff. And we're not, sure, we're competitors. Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, I wanted to be the highest rated guy. I want to be the best guy I can. But like, we're still buddies, and most of us are not playing each other in high school. So we had a great time we had a great time. I think it was 4 or 5 days, get coached by some of the best high school coaches in the nation. I remember Carson Palmer and his brother would come out. I think he brought TJ Hushmanzada one time, which, so it was a blast.
Yeah. And I think I read that some of the coaches too were current college players, or was that?
Yeah. So they had, and I'm going to mess this up, but I do remember, like, I think Matt Stafford was still in college at the time, my first year. So it was like Matt Stafford and Colt Brennan, maybe Chase Daniel. And then Colt McCoy certainly was one of them, one of the 2 years. But yes, they invite, so they another way, I don't know if they're, whatever, they're skirting recruiting rules or whatever, but they invited 4 college guys as counselors to be out there with us. And so get to spend some time with them, do Q&As, that sort of stuff, kind of learn the ins and outs of college football and the game and how things change once you get to that level. So
yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. And then, on to the All-American game. And to your point, I mean, the roster lineup was just stacked. I mean, it was like Manti Te'o and Vontez Burfict, and to your point, Russell Shepard. It was just, Drake Kirkpatrick. I mean, some of the names were
that's right.
We're just wild.
Dre was another one that came on a visit with me and to Texas, and I was trying to recruit him to come to Texas instead of Bama, but he got the last laugh at the national championship the following year. So
yeah, we'll get to that in a second. But what was it like kind of playing in that game with just, again, I mean, I know it's in retrospect, just like a ton of NFL talent.
Yeah, a lot of fun. I didn't do, like, leading up to the draft, I didn't do Senior Bowl or anything like that. I was coming off a knee, and so that's kind of my only experience ever with a game like that, where you're going out, you're practicing for a week, you're kind of playing with guys that you're not real familiar with. And in this case, you're going with essentially, I don't know, on each team, 50 of the top, 300 guys in the nation recruit wise. And it was so much fun. I mean, we got to go to Disney World. We had the schedule was very easy. I mean, in terms of just, practice a day, a walkthrough, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and then you're spending the rest of your time at Disney. So it was an absolute blast. And again, I got to bring my high school coach. So I was one of the only guys there that had my high school coach out there with me. Mason Walters, who ended up being a teammate of mine at Texas, was there. Zach Martin, I didn't even realize this until we played together in Dallas. Zach Martin was one of the guys there, committed to Notre Dame. And so we were the same high school class and playing on the same team. And so it was a great experience, a whole lot of fun.
Yeah. And so you get to Texas, and were you just like dreaming, like as a kid? I mean, this is your pinnacle. This is your like North Star, and you made it. Was it just like a surreal moment?
Maybe too much, honestly. I mean, yes, absolutely, all the above. I was as big a Texas fan as I said earlier. I was as big a Texas fan as there is, and I think it felt like. I mean, certainly, I still had goals beyond that. I'd always dreamed of playing in the NFL, but like, to be able to achieve that kind of first step and get to not only college, to earn a scholarship to go play in college, but, for it to be at Texas where I had, dreamed of playing forever, was absolutely surreal.
Yeah. And do you remember, or can you recall like a welcome to college moment you might've had, whether it was in practice, whether it was in a game, whether it was with a teammate?
Two come to mind. Number one, one of our first summer 7-on-7 sessions, I don't remember why or how, but we were either doing 2s-on-1s or Colt just let me have a series to go throw with the ones, and we're going against the one defense, and Earl Thomas was out there at safety. And one of my first plays, I take a drop back and can't find anything open, and I'm just kind of sitting there back there in the pocket, just shuffling my feet forever. And Earl and really everybody else on the defense starts yelling at me, but I vividly remember Earl. And I'm kind of like, I got nothing to say back to these guys. And, I mean, it was sort of like, okay, we're, like, here we go. You better figure things out, because otherwise this is going to get real pretty fast. Yeah. That's number one. Number two, late in our Missouri game, we were beating Missouri pretty good up in Columbia. And I got to go in for a series late in the game, and I rolled out to my right to it was just like a sprint out smash concept or something like that. And I rolled out to my right to make a throw, and Alden Smith came around the edge, peeled around, and hit me right square in the chest. And I think the first thing to hit the ground was, like the back of my head. Then my cleats were like pointed straight up in the air as I hit the ground. I mean, he just absolutely hammered me. And that was like the welcome to college hit for sure.
Yeah. Some of those hits, I'm sure you just,
and those guys are just, you're not playing against most high school teams, especially in Texas, have, one or two decent sized defensive linemen.
Yeah.
But then you get to go play in Big 12 games, and every single one of them, obviously, and so Alden got his piece of flesh there.
Yeah. Not to keep bringing it back to Trevor, but he talked about his experience playing with Myles Garrett in practice. And I'm dude, I couldn't even imagine. That would be terrifying.
My Myles Garrett story is, again, fast forward a bunch of years, but being in Cleveland and being the backup, and he would not stop. And again, obviously he's the best in the league, but he would not stop hitting my arm in practice during scout team reps. And what am I going to say? I can't do anything to the guy, but I'm kind of like begging with him. I'm like, dude, can you just like let me throw the ball so that the DBs can get a look at these too? Like, and he's like, no. And I'm like, all right, well, I guess whatever. I mean, I hope I don't get hurt, but it's like, it was just, that was his way of practicing. And he would get to the back, and he would just barely hit the ball just enough to screw with me. And, I'm like, so that was, a lot of fun. He's something else.
That's wild, because Trevor's story was obviously A&M, and his kind of Garrett story was that every time that he got to him in practice, I mean, he had the red jersey on, he's not getting hit, but he would smack his left or right thigh, and so hard every single time. And Trevor was like, I think I have a permanent bruise on my thigh. And it's just funny because it's like,
so I guess a few years later, he'd moved up to just knocking the ball out of my hand.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But yeah, so you mentioned Colt McCoy in practice, and I wanted to transition into him and kind of how was it like having Colt as a mentor? Because even like myself growing up, I mean, he was just one of those guys that you just, again, I mean, I was not a Texas fan, but I was a college football fan, and I was one of the premier quarterbacks in college football that you look up to.
Yeah, so, 4-year starter. I mean, kind of obviously had huge shoes to fill replacing Vince, stepped in and did obviously, set all the records at Texas. And I think nationally he was the winningest quarterback in college, maybe for a year until Kellen Moore broke his record. But, nonetheless, that's fantastic achievements. And I think for me, I was, number one, a big fan of his, going back to like my freshman year in high school, watching from afar, and then to get to kind of have 1 year to learn from him where he's going into a season that he is, a Heisman hopeful. We've got, I don't know, maybe number 2 or 3 ranked team in the nation in the preseason and won all the games leading up to the point. So, lived up to those expectations. It was just really cool to watch him. I think, again, understanding it's just a whole different game, understanding what it takes to be successful at the high school level and what I thought it took to be successful at the high school level. And, I felt like I was a hard worker in high school and, spending extra time in the film room, et cetera, compared to when you get to the next level and when you get to college, to see how much time Colt spent to prepare himself every week for games.
Yeah.
And I learned a whole lot from him and was fortunate to get to know him a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And, eventually you would take over in the BCS national championship game. And I know it didn't, maybe go your guys' way, but just, you were redshirt freshman at the time?
True freshman.
That, yeah. Even more so, like, what was that experience like as a true freshman? That's absurd.
Well, I'll try not to get too long-winded because I could probably talk for hours about this game. But
we got time.
But so 5th play of the game, we force a 3-and-out on Alabama. They try like a fake punt or something like that. Very, I don't know, ill-advised, something or other. We get great field position, and Colt goes out. And on the 5th play, our 5th play from scrimmage, we think we get a first down, and then we run back to hurry back to the line of scrimmage and run speed option. And Colt's shoulder just, gets hit by Marcel Darius, I think. And, I'm looking up at the Jumbotron, watching the replay. And all of a sudden I hear all the coaches call my name. Well, I got a baseball cap on just like this and don't have my helmet anywhere near me. So all of a sudden, it's like kind of not panic necessarily, but I'm like, oh, where's my helmet? So I turn around, run back to the benches. I went to the wrong bench. I went into Coach Muschamp's defensive huddle first, looking for it, and then finally go find it, run out on the field. Well, by that time, there's like 12 seconds on the play clock. We got to burn a timeout. So awesome start. And I remember Mac looked at me and he was like, hey, just take a breath. And so I walk into the huddle. I'm sure the first play I called, nobody could understand because I was probably talking so fast. But I remember that. And then the next thing I know, it was halftime. I mean, it was just like an absolute blur from that point till halftime. And, next thing I know, we're down. I think we were down 24-6 at halftime. It's like, okay, so we got to go do this for another 30 minutes, huh?
Yeah. And what were the discussions like in the locker room?
I think you've worked so hard to get to that point, right? And 24-6 is, that's a big deficit, but you're not out of the game.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of, finding some stuff that works. And essentially what I did is I just went back to finding one guy, and that was Jordan Shipley. It just so happened that he was pretty darn good. And so he got open a bunch for me in the second half, and I kept looking for him, and he, but getting ahead of myself at halftime, it's really just like, again, we're not out of this thing. We just got to chip away at it. And a lot of credit goes to the Texas defense, that they played phenomenal, and didn't give up any points in the second half, and, gave us a chance to come back. So,
yeah, I just can't even wrap my head around. You're probably 18, 19 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah. True freshman, national championship against Alabama. I mean, it's crazy. I keep bringing this back to Trevor, but he just talked about how he couldn't even imagine starting, because he was a redshirt freshman when he started with Oklahoma, but he was like, I don't understand some of these guys that can play as true freshmen. I was not prepared at all. Well, I think, honestly, I mean, if you ask me, I think there's almost some peace in being the true freshman that doesn't really understand what he doesn't know yet. You're just kind of out there reacting. Like, you don't even know the offense. The coach calls a play and you're just kind of out there reacting. There's an open guy, throw it to him. I don't even really know what route he had, but I'm going to throw it to him. And of course, for me, that wasn't necessarily the case. We're late into the first year. I'd been there long enough. I mean, I was, closer to being a redshirt freshman than a true freshman. But it was an unbelievable experience. And I think
certainly while I was in it, it was really hard to appreciate because it was so challenging. I mean, you talked about you mentioned all the things. You're playing Alabama. Of course, it was before Alabama was Alabama, but I think that was the beginning of the dynasty. But now that I look back on it, I have some incredibly fond memories of that night and that game and what it led to and how I kind of could draw on that, in the future in terms of my football career.
Yeah. Did Drake come find you after the game, Kirkpatrick?
Man, the after portion of the game was quite the blur too. I'll be honest. I remember turning around and looking and seeing the confetti and watching it and just trying to wrap my head around. That was like the first time that I had a chance to breathe, and it was like, okay, what in the world just happened? And we had the ball. We were down 24-21. We were on our own, I don't know, maybe 7-yard line, and it's kind of like there's 3 minutes left. It's like this is exactly what you dream about as a kid. And maybe at that point, like I kind of let myself start to believe like, okay, this is going to happen. Not that I ever believed that we weren't going to win, but like, almost to the point where like, all right, we're going to do this. And then I get sacked from behind, I fumble, and that all kind of goes out the window pretty quickly, like within 1 or 2 plays of that drive. So right after the game, it was kind of like, what just happened? And just wanted to get in the locker room, frankly.
Yeah, I get it. That's wild. Did you ever meet Nick Saban?
I don't think I have, actually.
Okay.
I really don't think I have. I've obviously gotten a chance to meet a lot of people, but I don't think we've ever gotten to cross paths.
Yeah, I was just curious.
Yeah.
And so just moving to the next season, next couple seasons, you're at Texas and you graduate.
I did, yeah.
And when did the thought of transferring kind of come into play?
Yeah. So to just kind of run through as fast as possible my sophomore year, because things weren't great. So, we get out of that game. Obviously, expectations pretty high going into the following year. Kind of, there's a whole lot of like, nothing's going to change. It looked like, from my perspective, it felt like, hey, we're just going to keep the train rolling. And things certainly did not go that way. My sophomore year, I didn't play great. We didn't play great as a team, and we ended up going 5-7. So going into my junior year, Mac Brown said, "Hey, we're going to open the quarterback job up again. Every job is open." Absolutely, totally understand that. So I ended up winning the job in camp, start the first game, but I tore my labrum. So played pretty well in the first game. The second game was against BYU at home. I actually I got benched midway through the first quarter. Things did not start very well. Through a couple of interceptions, I think one in the first and one early in the second, and I watched us come back and win against BYU. David Ash and Case McCoy kind of split time the rest of that game. David being a true freshman and Case, a redshirt freshman. So after that game, it was kind of like this is like a, I don't know, major decision. I know I have to get surgery on my shoulder at some point. I can either do it after the season, miss spring, and have no chance to play next year, or I can do it now and, give myself a chance in the spring, whether it be here at Texas or somewhere else. And David and Case played great the following 2 games. And at that point, it was kind of like, hey, I probably need a fresh start. So went in, talked with Mac, and decided like, hey, it's time to, number one, get this surgery right now. And then number 2, probably start looking elsewhere. And they were very helpful in that process. I got the chance to go up and that process was also ended up being super short. I got the chance to go up and visit SMU one morning. I watched practice. I got to speak with June Jones afterward for like 2 hours. And I just loved everything he was talking about and what he was building at SMU. And I was kind of like, I don't really want to go anywhere else. I'd never been further than 25 minutes. Yeah. So, let's just start with 3 hours away from Austin, for my next adventure.
Yeah. And was that a pretty difficult thing to do though, given your...
Certainly. Yeah. I mean, obviously I've, talked a ton about how big of a Texas fan I was. Like I did not want to leave there. I loved it there.
Yeah.
But I just felt like, for myself, for the team, for everybody, it just, if I wanted to have any chance to keep playing football, Texas needed to move on with the guys that they had, and I needed to move on and find somewhere else. And so, yes, it was very difficult.
Yeah. And were there any, I mean, I know you said it was like the proximity was there, but were there any other schools that you'd consider? Or was
So
really
right when I got hurt and right when I got benched, again, just weird NCAA rules. South Carolina hadn't started their semester yet.
oh
So there was some concern from my part about like, I'm probably gonna have to go sit out a year. But I thought maybe if I could make the decision and go play for Coach Spurrier, or that sure I wasn't gonna be able to play this year, but I would get, I could get there already, and this could be the year that I sat out, or red shirt or something like that. I can't remember the specifics of it, but like because they hadn't started school yet, there was some sort of deal where I could, transfer immediately and go, and everything just kind of was going to happen too fast for that. So I'm kind of glad that didn't come to fruition, because what ended up happening is I ended up staying at Texas through the following spring and graduating, and that bought me an extra season to play at SMU.
nice.
So
Yeah. And you get to SMU, and I know that obviously the Longhorns and SMU are a little bit different, but like what was, just tell me about your experience there and how that was.
It was awesome. I loved it. I think June deserves a lot of credit for my football career continuing on past college. I really enjoyed playing for him. I vividly remember. So my playing time my playing career at SMU started somewhat slowly. I was named the starter right when I got there, but just the nuance of his offense. It's an awesome offense. It's a whole lot of fun to play with, but it's kind of like basketball on a football field. The receivers are all looking at coverage, and their routes are very different based on what they see. And one receiver may see things differently than another receiver on the same play. So it just takes a little bit of time to get used to it. And I vividly remember after my fourth game there, we played TCU, and it was rainy, and I threw 5 picks, and which, is not a good night, obviously. But June pulled me aside the next day, and I was kind of in not a great place confidence wise, and he was like, "Look, man, you're our guy, and we're gonna go as far as you go." And that conversation just gave me so much confidence, and just like kind of just like let me take a deep breath, maybe for the first time in a long time, and be able to go out and just kind of wing it and play. And you look at the last 18, 19 games there at SMU, like I'm really proud of what we as an offense put on tape.
Yeah.
And so I think that, that June deserves a lot of credit for, my kind of moving on and being able to just go play football again.
Yeah. Yeah. I was looking at that last season specifically, and you did awesome.
So we ended up, so June is the run and shoot, and that offense kind of became famous in Hawaii when he had Colt Brennan and Timmy Chang in the early 2000s. He brought in Hal Mummy, who sort of never really, well, he did for a while, but Mike Leach is the more prominent air raid guy, but Hal Mummy invented that offense. So June and Hal are on the sideline arguing about what play to call almost every single snap. June thought it'd be fun to have his friend coach with him. Hal thought it'd be fun to come coach with June, but they have such clashing styles. Now, they managed to get along well enough for us to get plays called before the play clock expired. But it was just so fun watching them. Well, I'll say fun. It was it was something watching those two guys argue on the sideline. Literally just down. There weren't enough people at SMU games. They didn't even need headsets. They could have yelled at each other. But they're legitimately just like yelling back and forth at each other about, what play we need to call. It's 2nd and 4, and we're just standing at the line of scrimmage. The whole offense is just standing there waiting like, hey man, we need something. I don't care what it is. Just tell me what to do. So, but all that to say, they were able to put it together well enough that, we did have some fun on offense that year, and we were able to put up some points and move the ball down the field.
Yeah. Who usually won out in those conversations?
Hal did, because he was the one signaling. So June would yell at him, and June just wanted to throw the ball down the field, and Hal wanted to throw mesh and, throw it right in front of me 15, 20 times a game. And so Hal would win most of the time, but there was certainly some places for June stuff.
That is hilarious. I can imagine them you guys just like waiting.
There's a few thousand people at the game, so legitimately they could have took their headsets off and yelled at each other.
Yeah. And so you finish out at SMU. When did just the NFL draft process start? Was it like immediately after
that? Yeah. So we get done. We miss a bowl game my senior year. I told you earlier, I was dealing with a knee.
Right.
I went straight out to California and started, doing a little bit of like finishing up rehab, and started prepping for like pro day, 40-yard dash, all the, throwing, all that fun stuff. And that was a great 3 months, because physically I got in as good a possible shape as I could, as I'd ever been in. I mean, I was living out there in California by myself. I was, as everyone does, but like for the first time, like I was able to just fully focus on football. There was nothing, there was no school to worry about. There was none of that other stuff. It was just, all right, let's get myself ready for April. And June actually coordinated my pro day. And again, another reason why I feel like I had what I felt like was a really good pro day and kind of got myself in a position to be drafted. So that was a good process for me.
Yeah. And then talk to me about the actual draft itself.
So Thursday night's the first round. Had no expectation of being drafted Thursday. I maybe had some mild expectations on Friday night. So I was kind of parked in front of the TV on Friday night. By the time Saturday rolls around, I ended up getting drafted in the 6th round. I had completely quit watching. By the time my name actually rolled. Now I ran back in there once Jeff Fisher and Les Snead called, but I had completely quit watching. I was in the other room. Jordan Spieth this was 2014. So Jordan Spieth, another Texas guy. I was a big fan of his and still am. He was competing in the Players Championship and was playing great. I think he was near the top of the leaderboard. So I was sitting in my dad's office watching that. And Jeff Fisher calls. And so I go sprinting back in the other room, and we had some friends over and stuff. And that's when the celebration began.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that must have just been another kind of pivotal moment of like, holy crap, this is actually happening.
Yeah. Again, another one where exactly like you said, that there were certainly some times where early on late in my time at Texas and early on in my time at SMU where I was kind of like, am I actually going to get to go play pro football? And, I was proud of the fact that, I kind of persevered through some of that. I had a lot of great help and, June I mentioned, and then just the guys at SMU. And so to be able to actually achieve that and say, hey, like I got myself, not that I got myself, there was a whole lot that went into that, but, I got drafted and this is actually going to be something that I get to achieve. So, this dream that I'll be able to fully see out was pretty awesome.
Yeah. And so when is that? So you get to St. Louis, and when is that kind of, again, what's the timeline between being drafted and like you're there at 3
days?
Holy crap!
So get drafted on Saturday afternoon. I think I was headed out there on Monday.
Wow.
Had kind of all day Sunday to kind of hang out and just enjoy it, and then you're gone Monday to go, start doing media with the rest of the draft class, and then start working out. I mean, it's go time. So we start getting ready for OTAs and all that sort of stuff and learning the playbook and doing all that. And most teams have rookie mini camps. So that's the first thing they do. The Rams did not have a rookie mini. So we were not, we didn't do any of that stuff where we're just the rookies out there, or maybe they didn't have a regular mini camp. Anyway, I'm not 100. I guess I'm getting a little old here, but most guys fly in and they go do a mini camp, and we did not do that.
Interesting.
So, we flew in and we started working out and doing all that stuff. And then towards the end of OTAs, I think is when we had maybe a rookies only camp. But it was a quick process. So ready or not, let's go.
Yeah. And was there, not quite, I will ask you this, but we'll get to this in a moment, of like your first kind of NFL moment, welcome to the NFL moment. But was there more of anything that just kind of like shocked you? Or, as in that really early stage of like, oh, this is kind of how this goes.
I think similar to, when I mentioned getting to college and like the first, one of my first reps against Earl and the first team defense, like, Sam was what's Sam? So Sam Bradford tears his ACL in preseason, and maybe he was even coming off an injury. So there was some point in time where I was getting a couple reps with the ones, and when you watch an NFL defense at full strength just play together, it's really impressive. And I think that was something that I really noticed, like that guys are not open. Like, you really have to work with your eyes. You really have to work through your reads. And you really have to throw guys open, but like guys are not wide open. This is, that you got to be sharp.
Yeah. And what was your welcome to the league moment?
I think my welcome to the league moment actually came in practice. And I'll try not to get too in depth here, but we were practicing. We drafted Aaron Donald, who obviously became a pretty darn good player. And we were trying to run, maybe it was, I don't know. We were trying to run some sort of run play, and Aaron Donald, usually when you run plays with guards pulling, the guard will sometimes step on my foot. Like when I'm like, he's about to pull and I'm trying to get out from center, and he'll sometimes step on my foot if I'm not out of there fast enough. Well, in Aaron's case, he was stepping on my feet because he was in the backfield so fast. And it was at that point that number one, Jeff Fisher was like, okay, we don't need to be doing team, and or Aaron Donald's not allowed to be in here anymore. And number two, I was like, wow, these guys are good.
Yeah.
I mean, he was legitimately like, he's moving 3 yards in the spin that I can, step out and get away from center. So it was incredibly impressive.
I feel like there's kind of an unspoken like top 10 scariest NFL players of all time, and like he's
on
there.
there.
Yeah.
I mean, you see those videos of him doing like training with knives and all that. So I mean, he's unbelievable.
And the discussion that always I hear and see in my head is him on a podcast with DK Metcalf, and DK's like, oh yeah, I benched, I don't know, 450 or something, and Aaron's like, I benched 5. She's like 500 pounds. Like, what?
Yeah. I mean, he was an absolute freak of nature. And honestly, like, not the biggest guy in the world. Like, he's incredibly impressive, but if he came walking in here, I mean, he's only like, I don't know, 6'1". I mean, you could probably fact check me there, but like, I mean, he's not incredibly huge. He's
not Myles Garrett.
So quick, so strong, does everything well. And I mean, that's why he's a Hall of Famer.
Yeah. Crazy, man. Now I'm curious because you played for quite a few teams,
Sure
and
did.
I want to know. I've always wondered this. What is the living situation like when you play for that many teams in a relatively short amount of time?
Yeah. I mean, it all depended on the team, and I don't know, maybe the vibe of how long I sort of felt like I was going to be there. There were teams where like, so like I went from St. Louis to home for a while, and then New England so I got an apartment in St. Louis when I was on the practice squad. And then I was home for like 8 weeks, and then the Patriots signed me right before the playoffs. And at that point, it's kind of like, okay, there's no real point in getting an apartment now because, ideally this goes 6 weeks longer through the Super Bowl, but you never really know. So I went and lived in an extended stay hotel, and just did that for kind of I paid for like a month up front to get a little, relief on the rate. And then it was kind of like, we'll do this on a week by week basis. And then I got released midway through the off season in New England, and I go to Detroit, and Detroit was like mini camp and training camp. So the team put me up in a hotel, and I never really had any, I never really had anything else. I went to Oakland right after that, the team will put you up for 2 weeks once the season starts. So they put me up in a hotel for 2 weeks, and then it was like, all right, you're on your own. So I went and found an apartment that was, I don't know, 20, 30 minutes from the facility. Most teams will give you like a list of apartment complexes close by, and, like, this is where we recommend you live. And that's kind of that's kind of the end of it. So then like, and I could run through all of them, but the gist of it is it's all about kind of like, how long did I feel like I was going to be? Like if I'm signing a deal in the off season, I'm going to let the team put me up as long as they possibly can. And then if and only if, I find out I either make the team or I'm going to be on the practice squad, then I'll go start looking for a more permanent place to live. To make things a little more, not more difficult, but like I got married after my rookie year. So my wife was almost always going to be with me.
Yeah.
So now she's pretty flexible. Like, we never did anything other than live in an extended stay hotel in New England. And that ended up being a couple, pretty long-ish stints. So like, my daughter probably spent, when she was 2, she'd probably spent half of her life living in a hotel.
Wow.
I mean, they're extended stay hotels. So you got the kitchen, you got all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But she was just up and at 'em, and, she'd go have continental breakfast, and then her and my wife would go get after it while I went off to meetings and practice. So
what a man, that's just wild. Though.
Yeah,
I mean,
it was.
Just,
I mean, and certainly, there's a lot. It's a lot. It takes a lot. It takes a village, or whatever the saying is. But like, we had fun with it.
Yeah.
We had a blast with it. We're all over the country, and now there was a point in time further down the road where I was like, all right, I've had enough of this. But But for a long time, it was like that's all we knew, and my wife and I, and then my daughter, we had a great time with it.
Yeah. And so for people that may not know, what does being on an NFL practice squad consist of?
Yeah. So essentially, my process most of the time was, let's go back to my rookie year. Basically, you get done with training camp, and you go in and see the GM and the coaches, and they say, hey, listen, we're going to cut you, but we're going to bring you back on the practice squad. So that you are the third or the fourth quarterback most of the time. oftentimes if you have an older veteran quarterback, they'll let you get a few reps during the course of the week. But there's a lot of time where like I was playing receiver or safety or filling in on special teams, scout teams, just to try and help the team out. And there's not an unlimited amount of bodies. I mean, the practice squad has gotten bigger since it was 10 when I first started. It's now 16. So you are doing anything and everything with starter and backup, maybe ask in terms of like, hey, like I used to put together the 2-minute presentation. So I'm going to go in and watch the opponent that we're playing, and I'm going to break down their 2-minute defense, what they like to do at the end of the half, what they like to do at the end of the game, when they like to pressure, et cetera, et cetera. And all quarterbacks wanted to see and hear different things. I ended up not being on the Lions practice squad, but Matt Stafford always liked the other quarterbacks to go watch like a random game that was outside of our breakdown and just kind of see if you picked up anything on the, any kind of, one-timer blitzes that the defense maybe threw at you or one-timer coverages. So that was one of his things. In Carolina, one of my jobs was the offensive coordinator asked me to put together a short presentation on like some of our tendencies that we had as an offense. Like anytime we lined up in a stack, depending on if that stack was inside or outside the numbers, like that, did that give away anything as far as run or pass? And so I'd watch that, and I'd watch like the explosive plays tape and see if I could find anything that maybe we could implement that made sense in our scheme. So kind of a, jack of all trades in terms of, being able to do, whatever's asked of you by various members of the staff or quarterback. And then obviously you're going out and practicing during the course of the week. Maybe you get a few reps here and there in routes on air. Maybe you get a few reps in team. And then I always like to stay after with a practice squad receiver and try and just get a few throws in just to stay sort of sharp. And then once the weekend hits, you're not your job's not done. That's, but it's like, it's game time and everything's focused on the 53 guys on the roster. And I traveled on some teams, they said, hey, the practice squad's going to stay home. We're not going to bring you with us. And so that was all team dependent. So I don't know, pretty long-winded answer there, but there's a lot of stuff. So, I think my time on practice squad, and I started my career on practice squad and I finished my career on practice squad in New England, prepared me a lot for how to be a pro, how to prepare when you're not getting reps and, get ready for a game, even though you're not likely to play or even suit up. And I think it just prepared me for sort of that middle part of my career where I was able to be, start a couple games and be a backup.
Yeah. And you mentioned, your time in New England. Do you have a Belichick story or moment?
Oh man. Yeah, too many to count probably, but one of my favorite ones, and I'll try to keep this, PG or whatever, but one of my favorite ones was my first day back there, my last year. So Mac Jones sprains his ankle badly, and then the following week, Brian Hoyer goes out and gets a concussion. So it's Bailey Zappi, and then they call me, and we were the only two healthy quarterbacks. Mac wasn't doing a ton. Brian got put on IR, I think, and they had a rookie left-handed center by the name of Cody Russi. Great kid. I ended up spending a lot of time with him, mostly because of this story that I'm about to tell you. But so we get out there, and one of the first plays, and this is a lot on me because I wasn't really I was just swimming, trying to catch up, learn the offense, get ready to be the backup for the week. And one of the first plays of scout team that week was like an outside run. I have never in my life taken a snap from a left-handed center. So I go to take the snap, fumble. Coach Belichick has the whole scout team take a lap. I come back, I get the snap on that one, I think, and then 2 plays later, fumble again. So within the same period, we didn't have time to take any practice reps. I fumbled another snap, take a lap. So of course, the whole defense is sitting there waiting. I have single-handedly made practice 5 minutes longer because we got to take, laps, and the offensive linemen take forever to run their laps. So we get in film the next morning, and Coach Belichick puts those plays on, and he rewinds it, and he plays it through, and he rewinds it, and he plays it through, and he probably does that 15 times. And then he skips to the next play, which is the exact same thing, and he plays it, and he rewinds it, and he does that. And with some more colorful language than I'm about to give you, he goes, hey, Garrett and Cody, do I need to go over to Foxborough Middle School and find a couple of 12-year-olds who can execute the most basic skill that we have in football? Or are you guys going to figure this out? And again, I love Bill because he treated every guy the same. But that is not a fun feeling whenever you're sitting in there in that meeting room and the entire team is just looking at you. So Cody and I went out every practice after that, for the rest of the season and got about 15 to 20 snaps each. so that we would never have that happen again. And we didn't. We figured things out. But that is I have many, but that is one of my favorite ones just because, I mean, there's a whole lot that went into that, but it's like, just get the job done.
Yeah.
And that was kind of Bill's whole thing.
Yeah. He's just so, blunt, monotone, and serious. It's funny because you just look at, there are like compilations on YouTube of him in his where he's smiling.
His press conference. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Which is like,
well, and then like in his press conferences where he's, they're hysterical. It's great. And having got to know him over the years, I can even appreciate that, that level of humor that dry kind of wittiness almost, that he approaches his press conferences and really just life with.
I love when he's kind of trolling the Jets. I don't know if you see, and he's like,
yes.
It's like, takes the flag, accepts it and like,
yes.
it was on the punt, and he's kind of like,
and he gets just like the littlest smile,
just a little smirk. So funny. Now, so I kind of wanted to transition from the NFL because so you played in an alternative league, right?
I did, yeah. Yeah, so 2018, I thought, I had a chance to compete for the backup job in Carolina. It was myself and Taylor Heineke and Kyle Allen, who Taylor and Kyle have obviously both gone on to have great careers. And it was kind of myself and Taylor competing for the backup job. And the Panthers ended up going with Taylor. And at that point, I had no longer had practice squad eligibility. So because I had been on the practice squad for 2 full seasons, I could not be on the practice squad. So they kept Kyle Allen over me because he was a rookie.
I didn't realize there was eligibility for the practice squad.
They've changed it now to be more beneficial to veterans. So again, that's how I was able to kind of extend my career was, by way of this practice squad rule, which started in I think they did it I think they implemented it during the COVID year.
Okay.
And then it continued on after that. But so I spent all of 2018 out of football, and I got approached by a few guys, Bill Polian being one of them that was involved in this league, the AAF, which, if you're unfamiliar with it, it's sort of a precursor to what is now the UFL. So I haphazardly committed to it, still not really wanting to, and I don't mean this in a bad way in any way, shape, or form, but I didn't want to be the guy that couldn't let it go. If I couldn't play in the NFL, I wasn't going to just go keep chasing this and do that to my wife. I was going to, find something else. And I kind of decided this will be if I give this a shot, I'll do it one time. I'll do it one more time, give it a shot and see what it leads to. And then it was going to be one season. And then, if I was done playing football, then so be it. And so, I ended up getting drafted by Coach Spurrier, in the Orlando Apollos. And I got to tell you, it ended up being one of the most fun football seasons I ever had as a pro. I still have some really great friends from that team, some guys I keep in touch with. We were all living in a hotel together in San Antonio, and then in Orlando, and then in Jacksonville, because the team had to. It's funny because I'm in insurance now, but the league couldn't find an insurance company that would provide us with a workers' comp policy, or the state of Florida wouldn't provide us with workers' comp policy, something along those lines. So we had to go be employees of the state of Georgia, and to do that, we had to spend 51% of the season in Georgia. So we had to go up to Georgia to practice for 5 weeks in one day. So we moved. The whole team moved up to Jacksonville. We had our whole operation in Jacksonville, and then we would bus up to Georgia to practice at a small high school just across the border into Georgia every day. So anyway, all that being said, we spent a ton of time together, and we're bussing up an hour there, an hour back, playing cards, hanging out, and then we'd play cards every night after we got done with meetings, and it was so much fun. Everybody was in the same boat. Everyone was trying to get back to the NFL. I had a great group of guys, and I learned how to be a starting quarterback again. It had been a long time since I'd been a starter, and so getting to prepare every week as a starter and getting every rep, and then playing for Coach Spurrier. I mean, he is obviously an absolute character and a legend of the game of football, but he kind of simplified it to the point where legitimately, it was almost like being a freshman again. He was like, just throw it to the open guy, man. I hear all this stuff you're telling me about what you were looking at pre-snap, but I don't care. Just throw it to the open guy.
Yeah.
And there's some power in that. Yeah. So I had a blast playing in that league.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Do you know why the insurance company didn't insure the team?
I have no clue. It had something to do with work comp in the game of football, obviously being, I mean, work comp injury, percentage is like 100%.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but it just so happened that it was going to be way too difficult or maybe way too expensive to get a work comp policy as employees of the state of Florida. So we had to go be employees of the state of Georgia to get the same, insurance coverage. And then of course we make it 8 weeks, the league folds.
Right.
And as was my goal, I was able to sign with the Cleveland Browns the following day. And that's where I ended up getting to be teammates with Baker.
Yeah. And I know chronological order was a little wacky, but
no, you're good.
Yeah. So your team was with Baker. That's probably pretty cool. Like first full circle moment.
Very much so. I mean, again, as I said earlier, I don't know how often that happens where, not only two, really good friends get to be teammates, but two guys who went to the same high school. It was really fun. And in 2019, I'm sure Baker probably part of him wants to forget that season as, the Browns just didn't have a great year that year. I think we ended up going 6-10, maybe 7-9, but, I got to be Baker's backup. The first couple months I lived in Cleveland, his poor wife, I was living upstairs at their house. So his poor wife, I'm sure was real fed up with me and Baker just, hanging out, playing video games like we were high school kids all over again. But man, it was a fun season just in terms of like getting to share a quarterback room with somebody who's such a good friend and, watch him operate and be be a professional and be one of the stars of the league. And so I had a blast with it. I think it was so much fun.
Yeah. I mean, he is just killing it right now. He's always been a great player, but I mean, he's just really having a moment.
I'm really happy for him because obviously, a couple years later, fast forward, the Browns trade him away. He ends up in Carolina. I just watched him on the Manning Cast on Monday night running scout team defense for the Panthers after he's sat down there and then he goes to LA and kind of revitalizes his career in the back half of the 2022 season, I think.
Crazy story.
And now, obviously he's, I think within the top 5 of the MVP voting. I mean, that's just incredible. You're exactly right. So really cool and glad he's found a place where he's happy and can kind of be himself again.
Yeah, I was super fortunate to, I think it was 2 or 3 years ago when the Super Bowl was in Phoenix. I got to interview him on the red carpet there during this right before the Sports Illustrated party. And it was so cool because in that brief, I mean, it's probably a 10-minute exchange. I could just tell he's just an awesome dude. He was, I asked him what his favorite, his most memorable moment in college was at Oklahoma. And it was, I believe was the Red River Rivalry in beating Texas. And it was a play to, I think he was kind of being nice, but because he was with Mark Andrew. And it was a play to Mark where he just kind of tossed it up. And I was able to find that play. But it was awesome because at the very end, he just like looks at the camera and he goes, "Boards down, baby!" Like, and he just like, and it was just hilarious. Sorry, I didn't do that by the way, but yeah,
it's okay. There's no hard feelings there. He's a character.
He's hilarious.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. But and when did you kind of officially hang up the cleats?
Yeah, so I mentioned that 2022 season where I got embarrassed by Coach Belichick on film. So that season ends, and at that point, I kind of felt like, while I loved being I had turned into sort of the older kind of mentor type guy, and been thrust into that role a little bit, and I felt like, I mean, listen, you could ask Mac and he may say something different, but like I felt like we had a great relationship there in New England, and I was kind of at least somewhat, of use, there, like where I felt like I was, again, passing some stuff on about the game of football. And a lot of the stuff that I learned from guys like Sean Hill and Dan Orlovsky and Derek Anderson. And so, after that season, we were about to have our second kid. We had a home back in Dallas now. Like we have a home here, and it just kind of felt like I know where my ceiling is. I'm a borderline practice squad to third guy, maybe can win and I felt like I could still play, like win a backup job, but like that wasn't really in the cards at that point anymore. And so it was just time, I think, for myself and for my family to just kind of move on and take a step away from the game of football.
Yeah. And I can imagine it's probably different for everybody, but at the same time, I'm sure it's just kind of weird going from like being a professional athlete specifically and, professional in the NFL to something else. I mean, how was that transition for you, especially like playing, in the league for so long?
Yeah. It was definitely strange. Now, because I had been out of football in 2016, so I get cut by the Raiders in May of 2016, and I called up Chad Morris, who I mentioned earlier, was my high school coach. He was now the head coach at SMU, or he was at the time the head coach at SMU, and I asked him if I could come help, and I got a little taste of coaching that year. And then 2018 happens, and we stayed in Charlotte, and I, kind of tried to start figuring out what might be next after football, and then the AAF thing happened, so I did give it one more run, and then before Mac had gotten hurt, Mac Jones, I was out of the league for kind of 6 weeks prior to that. So I had a little taste of what life after football was like, but I never really had, closed that door. And so it was a little bit like, January and February where I usually kind of start working out again. And I'm like, okay, what do I do now?
Yeah.
Honestly, the answer to that question was, I don't really know. It was a little strange.
Yeah. And how did you, just because you mentioned you're in the insurance space.
Yeah.
Were you like, I want to be in the business area, or what did you?
I mean, by accident,
By
honestly.
accident, yeah.
I mean, like, so I had multiple conversations with people, and, the entire SMU alumni base, at least it feels this way, is in commercial real estate. So I kind of started looking into that. And 3 years ago at this time, there wasn't much movement in the commercial real estate space for whatever reason. And so I didn't really I didn't really find any traction. Like, I'd go sit down with people and I'd ask them what they do and I'd try to learn about it and I'd say, oh, that sounds interesting. And I didn't really find anything that, like, I was like, all right, I'm gung ho about this. So a couple months later, I met a guy who now has become one of my really good friends. Well, first I met a guy who coached at Highland Park, a pretty prominent high school here in Dallas. And I had known him through a former coach of mine, and he had stopped coaching and got into insurance. And so I kind of started asking him, hey, what does that entail? What does that look like? And we went and had lunch, and he was kind of telling me about his role and everything. And it just seemed to check all the boxes. This agency that I work for, at least the industry. And, he's got 2 kids. He's home every night for practice, or for their sports practices and for dinner. And, he's, kind of there to be able to drop them off for school once or twice a week. And you're in front of people all the time, which I love. This is like the type of stuff I love, just sitting down and, talking. And so that kind of piqued my interest. And he said, well, let me introduce you to our president. And as it turns out, our president was a member at the same golf course that I'm at up in Prosper. And by the way, that's another thing that I love. And insurance guys get to play a lot of golf. So that was another box.
Not a bad deal.
That was another box that got checked.
Yeah.
So we went and played golf one day, and I had a great time. And I met a guy by the name of Tyler Lyons, who pitched in the bigs for about 10 years. And again, just kind of asking him the same questions. And it really seemed like this might be something that, I could do, because I felt like I spent a lot of time looking for like my next quote unquote passion. And again, I've enjoyed insurance a lot, but I think the better question that I need to be asking myself is, can I find something that will let me do the things that I'm passionate about, which is spending time with my family? I miss a lot of my daughter's stuff just being gone all the time. And so being able to be at soccer practice and go drop her off at school, and, being home to have family dinners and going to play golf, honestly, like, that stuff is important to me. And then getting to spend time with people and, learn about what they do. And so again, I interviewed with a number of agencies around town. And I just kept coming back to this BSBD that I now work for. And it's been awesome. So I've been there about 2 years now, and, still figuring things out, but I'm having a great time with it.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
And would you ever dive into the coaching space at all? Would you ever explore that?
So I don't know. I get to work with a couple kids in the area that I really like. They're younger kids. They're learning to play the position. I love doing that. I will coach my kids, I'm sure. My issue with coaching is that I just think it's really hard to do if you, and I love football, I really do, but I just think it's really hard to do if you don't love being around it for 80 hours a week.
Yeah.
And I think I just get a little tired of it after a little bit. And so again, that's why I mentioned earlier, I got to dip my toe in that water at SMU in 2016, and I loved it. Like our starting quarterback got hurt, which sucked, but I got to spend a lot of time with this young redshirt freshman that was just being thrust in as a starter, very similar to my situation when I was at Texas. I got to mentor him. Kid's name was Ben Hicks. He now does commercial real estate here in Dallas, actually. But I felt like I got to be a great influence on him. I just didn't love all the other stuff.
Yeah.
Again, I just, it's impossible to be the dad and the husband that I want to be. I think if you're coaching, I mean, there are guys that handle it really well, and maybe I just, maybe that's just, maybe down the road. But as it currently stands, I really like where I'm at.
It is. It seems like it's just your entire life. Like it's wild. I mean, like we were talking offline. I am fortunate to do some work with the University of Oregon, and even just watching, Dan Lanning from afar, it's like, does this guy ever sleep?
How could you?
It's crazy.
He's focused on defensive game planning. He's, making sure that, I don't know if you've gotten the chance to know Will Stein, as a little side note, at all, the offensive coordinator there.
No, I've never met him.
Okay,
but
so Will was at Lake Travis, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago.
That's right.
My high school, and then went to UTSA, and we root hard for him from afar. But anyway, how could you? It's like you said, because I think he's very involved with the defense. You have to at least check on the offense. And then you got to deal with the boosters, and then you got to deal with the alumni, and then you got to deal with recruiting, and then you got to deal with making sure their players are going to class. And so, when do you sleep?
Yeah, I don't know. So I get it. But Garrett, this was a awesome conversation. I really, really appreciate the time, but I think that's all we got for now.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it too. I had a great time.
Thanks for watching another Where Are They Now show. My name is Adam Ferris, your host. Make sure to like and subscribe, as it really helps us out, and click that bell so you will never miss a future video. And don't forget that we look at all the comments. We listen to you guys. So in the comments, let us know who we should sit down with next and answer the question of where are they now?